Do you remember your first poem?
Yeah, I do. It's in Black Philly and Black Talk. It's called On Hearing the Girl with the Golden, with the Flaxen Hair, I'm sorry. You know, I forget now who wrote it because I'm tired, you know. Bum, ba, da, dun, da, 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 dun, 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 dun. And I was doing my classical musical stage, because I'm not, you know, like an opera fan. I mean, I know enough to enjoy it or to appreciate it. I'm basically a jazz fan. But when you start to break the music down, you have to listen to some of the other influences. And so I wrote a poem.
Oh, that's so interesting. You also said that you're a teacher and you're still a professor now. And obviously they learn from you. But what do you learn from your students?
Well, a lot of things, actually. They're trying to teach me the internet, and they're not having much luck with that. But I've had students who are into NASCAR, and I used to laugh about that. You know, it's like, oh man, who can watch that? And they said, well, I don't think it's fair, Nikki. And I thought, well, you're right. You know, it's not fair for me to ask them to learn something I don't. So I'm now pretty good with NASCAR. Of course, I tell them all the time, it makes you go to sleep. So if you can't sleep at night, you just turn on. We have a channel. I have Dish because I live in the mountains, and we have a channel called Speed. So when you can't sleep at night, just turn the Speed channel on. And next thing you know, you're dreaming. But I learn a lot, and from the questions they ask, and it's what made me become also fascinated by the fact that your generation, and I'm just assuming you're probably sophomore or something like that, you're 18, 19 years old. If we go even further down, just 10 years, these are kids that have never known privacy. And it's going to be really interesting how that impacts on a Republican form of government and how they learn to make decisions based not on foolishness, but to get to the heart of, because everything you say and do is going to be known. And so you're going to have to figure out what you're going to discard, what is not important. And I think that that's, it's a question of not only education, but compassion.
Yeah, you're obviously really passionate about that because you talked about it so much tonight. How did you get started in activism and being so involved in those kinds of programs?
So I was born in 43, and that puts me just a little bit ahead of the boomers. And it's just not me, but we were the civil rights generation. And I am not a sociologist, I'm just a poet who was a history major. But I think sociologically speaking, the impact of grandmothers on my generation has not really been explored, not in any sort of in-depth. And if I live and keep my mind to something, is something I love to look into, because we could do, I'm speaking as a generation, when you look at my generation, almost all of us lived with our grandparents. And we could do anything in the world except tell our grandparents we couldn't make a difference. So we could die, but we couldn't go home and say we didn't do it, we didn't get the job done. And so we did, we were the generation that changed America, and I think that 90% of it was just based on that. And when I look now at, for example, the NBA particularly, I'm looking again at a lot of young men who have lived with their grandparents, that their parents are single, their mothers are single mothers, and they've actually lived with their grandparents. And again, that responsibility, you look at a great kid like an Allen Iverson and them, you're looking at a kid that says, well, I can do anything but tell my grandparents I can't feed them. And so he took the skill that he had to become a millionaire. But then if you look at Jay-Z, you've almost got the same problem. So it's really interesting to me, the impact of grandparents and what that has meant to this other generation. We were the civil rights generation, these are the businessmen. And so it's really just very interesting, that evolution and how it goes forward. And that's part of the fight that's going on in America.
Okay. You have won so many awards and honorary degrees and things like that. What does that mean to you? Does it mean anything special?
You have a job to do and you try to do it, and you do it as graciously as possible. You can't get excited about, I mean, I'm pleased, and when my mother was here, of course it just, thrilled her. She would go with me and say, oh, see my baby. But you have to be very careful what you get excited about, because you don't control awards. I didn't give myself the award. I received an award for having done something, and what I basically do is I think. And I'm a pretty honest person, so I think and I say what I think. And sometimes that's rewarded, and sometimes, my books have been banned too. So, you know, you get both sides. You just keep the balance going.
Can you explain a little bit more about that your books have been banned?
Oh, sure. Sarah Palin, you know, the stupid bitch that she is. Oh, excuse me. Sarah Palin, she is, pulled, and of all the books, too, My House, out of the library. Remember, she went through that thing. You can go look it up. And she was banned. She was pulling all the banned books. She pulled my book, My House. Of all of the nice books, it's such a lovely, you know, it's about my son, and you know, just really nice things. I thought, boy, she can't read, because I can think of things I've said that probably she would pull. But of course, I was also banned in South Africa because everybody black was. And the Oakland School Board, before we made the changes in Oakland that needed to be changed, I'm a big fan of the Panthers. Those are great men. And America has mistreated them for a terrible man like J. Edgar Hoover, who never did anything decent for anybody at all. And there's not a president of the United States while he was still alive that would say, you know, he was a decent man, because he wasn't. But we got the Panthers organized in Oakland, California. And previous to that, the Oakland School Board banned, you know, not just me, but a lot of people. I mean, nobody's like, we're gonna get Nikki. I just got caught up in the general swoop. Yeah, sure. I mean, it happened. You write books, you get banned. Luckily, we're in America, so you don't get arrested, because people all over the world. I belong to PEN. I'm a proud member of PEN, because writers all over the world are arrested, in some cases murdered, for what they're saying, and for what I take for granted that I can say in America would get me killed in some other places. So it's a freedom that is a precious freedom, and we not only accept the fact that we will do all we can to make sure that we maintain that ability of artists to speak out, but also to reach around the world. You just shouldn't be killed for writing a poem.
You said a lot of things tonight about like bettering the world and the happiness and things like that. Do you have any advice, like specifically on how someone would do that? No, I really don't. And I just know that you have to make a decision that you're going to do something with your life. I'm not, you know, I'm not a guru. I'm not sitting on the mountaintop and you come up and I dispense wisdom, none of that. But I know a lot of people sometimes are feeling unhappy, and a lot of people are lonely, whether we're young or old. And 90% of that is because they are afraid to follow their passion. So they come to school, their parents send them to school, and they say, well, my mom wants me to, you know, major in engineering, and so I have to. I mean, it's that kind of, and I think that that's just unfair. I have a lot of faith in your generation. I don't mind being old at this time, knowing that you guys are behind us. You know, I do. I don't worry about it. I know that my generation worried people, and moneyed people, and people that were very comfortable with status quo didn't like us, and that would include J. Edgar, whom I absolutely hate. But because of what he did, the FBI stood around and watched people get murdered, and did nothing about it. You know, so I don't have any respect for that. But I'm not worried what's going to happen when your generation takes over, because I think you're good-hearted people. I'm just hoping that you'll also be as happy as you are intelligent, because a strong mind with a bad heart just doesn't work, you know. And so I'm just hoping that you find that you have to give, and we know that. I mean, that's as old as the Bible. That just, it's biblical, and it's beyond that, because the Bible's not the oldest book. You know, we can go back into the Greeks and into, you know, the old Hebrew and so. You have to find something that you're willing to give. And I think that we need to say that, because we're telling you all the time, you have to make money, you have to make money. Well, you're Americans. That's just not one of the things you have to do. Americans don't have to make money because you're already better off than most of the world. So there's no reason any American should ever be anxious about food, clothing, and shelter. It's antithetical to the American experience. And so we can't let you come to colleges, and we can't let you go to graduate school holding on to these ideas that are, you know, Depression-era ideas. It's no good. You have to have the confidence that the future is a friend, and you have to embrace the future just exactly that way, I think. Right. So how would you define success then? Would it be happiness? Or?
I think success is knowing that you are fulfilling your dreams. Mm-hmm. And it's just something, you know, like all mothers, I think, I absolutely cried real tears when that young man at Rutgers jumped off the bridge because someone intruded in his space. You have to have a little bit more of your self-confidence. He was gay. This is no big deal. I mean, it was probably no big deal when they were, you know, killing witches about it, you know, or when they were flaying, you know, Jews because they wanted to make them convert to Catholicism, whatever the hell it is, you know, you get sick of that. But you've got to find a way to define success for yourself. And it can't be because somebody says, well, you know, my son's a doctor, my daughter's a lawyer, you know, and she went to the Supreme Court, and, you know, and it's like, What you're trying to do is say, well, you know, what I really like is collecting comic books. And the kid that did that had a Silver Surfer, #1 Silver Surfer. I probably threw Thomas, my son's name is Thomas, who was a big fan of Silver Surfer. I probably threw it out. And this kid trades it for $10,000. You know, it's one of those kind of things. He's a success. His parents were probably having a fit. But my son, he collects comic books, you know, and they're ashamed of him. And now he's got a business going to be some wonderful business, and he's happy. You have to make up your mind what works for you. And then you have to explore it. And then if it doesn't work for you, I'm a big fan of divorce. We were talking about that. Because when it doesn't work for you, that's not a failure. That's sufficient. You know, and we don't want to teach that to a younger generation. There is a sufficiency to everything. You have done what you can do. Now it's time to do something else. That doesn't make for failure. That makes for recognizing change should come. I'm a big fan of that. I am.
This question's a little bit strange. I heard a rumor that you have a tattoo on your arm.
Oh, yes.
Can you explain the tattoo?
It says Thug Life. Yeah,
Can you explain
absolutely. I got it because Tupac was assassinated. And to me, Tupac was to my son's generation. Tupac was 2 years young. Thomas is 43 now. But when he died, he was 2 years, Thomas is 2 years older than Tupac. So I couldn't imagine what, I don't know Afeni, I still don't know her. I've never met her, his mother. But I just couldn't imagine what it's like to have to bury your child, because he's just shot down like a dog in the street. And so I'm not a fan. I am, let me go positive on this. I'm a fan of government conspiracies. So anytime important people die, I don't believe it was the neighbor next door. I don't believe it's because, you know, your dog shat on the corner and you got none of that. I think that somebody decided to take you out. And I wrote a poem and I said that somebody decided this time let's cut that tree down before it becomes an oak and can really shelter somebody. So I'm not at all convinced. As you know, it's an unsolved murder. And it's something that won't come up, you know, probably in the next 50 years we might get some information on it, because there's information to be had. I don't know if you've ever been to Las Vegas. Las Vegas doesn't have street lights because the casinos put so much light out that you don't need them. But Las Vegas is in the desert. So if a white car on a clear night is driving in the desert, it can be seen. So we know that there was a white car that drove, and everybody said we can't find it. There's no way that that car could get to LA or any place else without being seen. So somebody knows something. This is what I'm saying. I got the tattoo because I wanted Afeni to know that somebody cared. And I got the tattoo, and the New York Times, I think my editor, somebody said it, but the New York Times called and said, could they photograph it? Because I was disenchanted with the way people were talking about that young man. He was a great man. Tupac is a great man, he's incredibly talented, and he's now dead. And so people are going to write in and say, well, he got what he deserved. Nobody deserves that. You know, I'm not a fan of deserves. And I know that his mother did not deserve to lose him, and he did not deserve to lose his life. So all I could do, and I am a fan of all he can do, but all I could do at that point, you know, this was his tattoo. He had Thug Life on his abdomen. I knew better than put it on my abdomen. You know? I'm not an idiot. You see me now holding my blouse. But I wanted a public tattoo, so I put it on my arm.